Captain Jake Morrison stared at the massive alien ship floating in space before him. The thing was bigger than any building he had ever seen back on Earth. Its dark metal hull gleamed under the light of the distant star. Strange symbols covered, its surface glowing with a cold blue light that made his skin crawl. "Captain, they're sending us another message," said Lieutenant Kate Wilson from her station. Her voice was tight with fear. Jake nodded and pressed the communication button. The main screen flickered to life, showing the face of something that came straight out of a nightmare. The creature had scales instead of skin, yellow eyes that burned like fire, and teeth that could tear through steel. It wore what looked like military armor covered in medals and symbols of rank. "I am Admiral Corvash of the Galactic Empire," the alien said. Its voice was deep and cold, like the sound of grinding metal. "You will listen carefully, human. Your species has been judged." Jake felt his heart pound in his chest. When he had taken command of the Terra's Hope 3 months ago, he thought the worst thing that could happen was engine failure or getting lost in space. He never imagined meeting something like this. "We know about your world," Admiral Corvash continued. "We have watched you develop nuclear weapons. We have seen your ships leave your solar system. You have reached the level where you must choose." The alien paused and leaned forward. Its eyes seemed to look right through the screen and into Jake's soul. "The Galactic Empire has ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. Every species that learns to travel between stars faces the same choice: submit to our rule or die. There is no third option." Jake found his voice. "What do you mean, submit?" "Your world will surrender all weapons. Your governments will step down. Imperial governors will take control of your planet. Your military will be disbanded. Your people will serve the Empire as workers and soldiers. Those who resist will be killed." The words hit Jake like a punch to the gut. He thought about his wife Sarah and his 2 kids back on Earth. He thought about the millions of people going about their daily lives, not knowing that their entire world was about to change forever. "And if we refuse?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer would be terrible. Admiral Corvash showed his teeth in what might have been a smile. "Then we will destroy your sun. Every planet in your solar system will burn. Every human will die. We have done this 47 times before. It is not difficult." Jake's hands shook as he gripped the arms of his captain's chair. "Why are you telling me this? Why not contact our governments directly?" "We are telling your governments, we are telling your military leaders. We are telling everyone who needs to know. But you, Captain Morrison, have the honor of carrying our message back to Earth. You will tell your people what they have seen here today." The alien stood up, its massive frame filling the screen. "You have 30 standard galactic days to decide. That is more time than most species receive. Do you know why we give humans more time?" Jake shook his head, not trusting his voice. "Because you developed nuclear weapons faster than any species we have encountered. You went from discovering fire to splitting atoms in less than 1 million years. Most species take 3 times as long. You also fight each other constantly. Your entire history is war after war after war. These traits suggest you might be useful as soldiers in our armies." The Admiral walked closer to the screen. "But do not mistake our generosity for weakness. If you choose to fight, you will lose. Every species thinks they are special. Every species thinks they can resist the Empire. They are all dead now." Jake forced himself to speak. "How many species are part of your empire?" "Over 3,000. Some joined willingly after seeing our power. Others fought and were conquered. A few chose to die rather than surrender. Their worlds are now empty rocks floating in space." The communication screen flickered. Admiral Corvash was preparing to end the conversation. 30 days, Captain Morrison. Return to your world. Tell them what you have seen. Tell them what waits for them if they choose poorly. The Empire does not make threats. We make promises." The screen went black. Jake sat in his chair staring at the empty screen for several minutes. Around him, his crew remained silent. They had all heard every word. "Captain," Lieutenant Wilson said quietly, "what do we do?" Jake looked around at the faces of his crew. These were good people. Navy officers who had volunteered for deep space exploration because they wanted to push the boundaries of human knowledge. They had families back home. They had dreams and plans for the future. We go home, Jake said. We go home and we tell everyone what happened here. The Terra's Hope turned away from the alien fleet and began the long journey back to Earth. As they traveled through space, Jake thought about the Admiral's words. 30 days to surrender or die. No negotiation, no compromise, just surrender or death. But he also thought about something else. In all of human history, no one had ever conquered the entire planet. Not the Romans, not the Mongols, not anyone. Humans had a way of fighting back when someone tried to tell them what to do. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time, the invaders would be the ones who were surprised. The Terra's Hope flew through the darkness toward Earth carrying news that would change everything. Behind them, the alien fleet waited and watched, confident that they had seen this story play out many times before. They had no idea what humans were capable of when their backs were against the wall. The news hit Earth like a bomb. Within 6 hours of Captain Morrison's return, every television station, radio broadcast, and internet site carried the same terrible message. Humanity was not alone in the universe, and the neighbors were not friendly. President Lisa Hayes stood in the White House Situation Room, watching news feeds from around the world. In London, crowds gathered outside Parliament demanding answers. In Tokyo, the stock market crashed as panic selling began. In Moscow, military leaders held emergency meetings behind closed doors. Everywhere, people asked the same question: what do we do now? Madam President, said General Rick Turner, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, we need to make a decision. Quickly. The public is starting to panic. Lisa nodded. She had been president for 2 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. How do you tell 7 billion people that they have 30 days to surrender to aliens or watch their world? Burn? What are our options, General? She asked. General Turner pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's military assets. We have approximately 2,000 active military spacecraft, mostly patrol vessels and cargo ships. Our best weapons are nuclear missiles, but we have no idea if they'll work against alien technology. And if we surrender? Asked Secretary of Defense Paul Carter. Then we become slaves, Lisa said firmly. I've read Captain Morrison's full report. These aliens don't want to negotiate. They want complete control. Across the room, Dr. Sam Rodriguez cleared his throat. The young physicist had been called in as an expert on advanced weapons technology. Madam President, there might be another option. Lisa turned to face him. Go on. The aliens said they've conquered over 3,000 species, but they also said most species take 3 times longer than us to develop nuclear weapons. That suggests they might not understand how our technology works. General Turner frowned. What are you getting at, Doctor? Sam walked to the display and pulled up a complex diagram. Most alien species probably developed energy weapons before nuclear technology, but we did it backwards. We learned to split atoms before we learned to build ray guns. That means our approach to physics might be completely different from theirs. Can we use that somehow? Lisa asked. Maybe. I've been working on a project at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. We call it Project Hammer. It's based on using nuclear reactions in ways that most physicists would consider impossible or too dangerous. Secretary Carter leaned forward. What kind of ways? Sam hesitated. We can turn nuclear explosions into directed energy beams. We can create gravity wells that bend space and time. We can even make weapons that get more powerful the more energy is thrown at them. The room fell silent. Finally, General Turner spoke. How long would you need to make these weapons? With unlimited resources and every physicist on the planet working together, maybe 25 days. Lisa felt a spark of hope for the first time since the crisis began. Do it. Whatever you need, you get it. Meanwhile, Colonel Amy Parker was having her own meeting at the Pentagon. As head of Special Operations Command, she was responsible for planning humanity's military response. The problem was that no one knew how to fight aliens. The way I see it, she told her assembled officers, we have 2 advantages. First, they don't know how we fight. Second, we're crazy enough to try things that no sane species would attempt. Major Chris Davis, her second in command, pulled up intelligence reports from Captain Morrison's encounter. The alien admiral said they've conquered every species they've met. That suggests they have standard procedures for dealing with resistance. Exactly, Amy said. They expect us to fight like everyone else. Big fleets, formal battles, honorable combat, but humans don't fight that way. She activated a wall display showing historical battles. Humans use guerrilla warfare. We hide behind asteroids and attack from ambush. We strap bombs to ourselves and ram enemy ships. We use tactics that other species would consider dishonorable or insane. Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Brown raised his hand. What about their numbers? Captain Morrison reported seeing hundreds of ships, and that was just the advance force. Amy smiled grimly. Then we don't fight their ships. We fight their supply lines, their communications, their ability to coordinate. We make them afraid to leave their big formations. As the military planned their defense, something unexpected was happening around the world. Instead of panicking, people were getting angry. Social media filled with messages of defiance. Humanity first became the most popular hashtag in history. Videos of people declaring they would rather die free than live as slaves went viral. In New York, construction workers volunteered to build orbital defense platforms. In California, tech companies offered their factories to build weapons. In Texas, ranchers donated their land for military bases. Everywhere, ordinary people decided they would not go quietly into slavery. The most surprising response came from humanity's enemies. North Korea offered to share their nuclear technology. Iran provided uranium from their stockpiles. Even terrorist groups contacted governments offering to fight alongside their former enemies against the alien threat. Dr. Rodriguez found himself at the center of the biggest scientific project in human history. Physicists from every country worked together, sharing research that had been classified for decades. The language barriers didn't matter. The political differences didn't matter. Only one thing mattered: building weapons that could kill aliens. The key, Sam told his international team, is that we think differently. They've probably never seen weapons that use quantum tunneling to bypass shields. They've never fought ships that can phase in and out of normal space-time. A Japanese scientist named Dr. Yuki Tanaka raised a concern. But Dr. Rodriguez, these weapons are incredibly dangerous. If we make a mistake, we could destroy our own solar system. Sam nodded. That's exactly why they'll never expect us to use them. What species would build a weapon that could kill everyone, including themselves? Dr. Tanaka understood. Humans would. As the days passed, Earth transformed into a fortress world. Factories retooled to build spacecraft. Mines worked around the clock to extract metals for weapons. Scientists pushed the boundaries of physics in ways that should have been impossible. But the most important change was in humanity itself. Old hatreds were set aside. Ancient enemies became allies. Rich and poor, young and old, every human understood that their species faced extinction unless they fought together. 23 days remained until the deadline. In space, Admiral Korvash's fleet waited patiently, confident that the humans would surrender when they realized the hopelessness of their situation. The Admiral had conquered dozens of worlds. He had seen species beg for mercy and others fight hopeless last stands. But he had never encountered a species that would rather break the laws of physics than accept defeat. He was about to learn what made humans different from every other species in the galaxy. Admiral Korvash stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, as his massive fleet approached the human solar system. 5,000 Imperial warships moved in perfect formation through space, their hulls gleaming under the light of the human sun. This was more firepower than had been used to conquer the last 10 species combined. "Admiral," said his tactical officer, a tall alien with 4 arms and silver skin, "we are detecting unusual readings from the human system." Korvash turned his burning yellow eyes toward the sensor display. "What kind of readings?" "The humans appear to have no defenses, sir. No orbital platforms, no patrol fleets, no weapon installations. Their homeworld shows normal civilian activity, but we detect no military preparations." The Admiral frowned. In his 300 years of military service, he had never seen a species fail to at least attempt some kind of defense. Even the most peaceful races built shields or tried to hide their populations. The humans were acting as if they had simply given up. Perhaps they have decided to surrender after all, suggested his communications officer. Many species realize the futility of resistance once they see our full might. Korvash was not convinced. He had read the reports from the first contact. The human captain had shown fear, yes, but also something else. Defiance, anger, species that possessed those traits did not usually surrender without a fight. Maintain alert status, he ordered. Begin a detailed scan of the entire system. I want to know where every human ship is located. The fleet continued its approach toward Earth. Standard Imperial doctrine called for a demonstration of power before accepting surrender. The Admiral would destroy the human moon as a warning, then demand the immediate capitulation of all human governments. But something was wrong. His sensors showed the solar system was empty except for normal civilian traffic around Earth. No hidden fleets, no secret bases, no sign of the military preparations that should have been happening for the past month. Captain Jake Morrison floated in the cramped cockpit of his new ship, the Defiance, hidden inside a large asteroid in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. Around him, 200 other human vessels waited in similar hiding spots. Each ship was equipped with Dr. Rodriguez's new cloaking technology, making them invisible to alien sensors. All units, this is Morrison, he spoke into his radio. Enemy fleet is approaching Earth. Remember, we only get one chance at this. Make every shot count. The human ships were smaller than the alien vessels, but they carried weapons that no other species had ever used in battle. Instead of energy beams or plasma cannons, they were armed with kinetic bombardment systems that could accelerate chunks of metal to incredible speeds. More importantly, they carried nuclear weapons modified in ways that defied conventional physics. Dr. Rodriguez had discovered that nuclear explosions could be shaped and directed using gravitational fields, turning simple atomic bombs into precision weapons of devastating power. Target the command ships first, Morrison continued. Take out their ability to coordinate, then focus on the big ones. Remember, we're not trying to win this battle. We're trying to hurt them badly enough that they think twice about coming back. On Earth, President Hayes sat in a bunker deep beneath the White House, watching the alien fleet approach on satellite feeds. The plan was risky beyond belief. If it failed, humanity would be wiped out. But if they did nothing, they would become slaves. Madam President, said General Turner, Captain Morrison reports ready for the attack. Dr. Rodriguez confirms all weapon systems are operational. Lisa nodded. She had aged 10 years in the past month, but her voice was steady. Give the order. Back. In space, Admiral Korvash watched as his fleet moved into position around the human moon. His flagship's main weapon, a planet killer capable of cracking worlds in half, began charging its devastating beam. Target Luna, he commanded. Prepare to fire. The weapon's energy buildup would take several minutes. During that time, he would broadcast a final surrender demand to Earth. If the humans refused, their moon would be destroyed as an example of imperial power. Admiral, his sensor officer called out, I'm detecting energy signatures throughout the system, multiple contacts appearing on all sensors. Korvash spun around. Where? Show me. The main display lit up with hundreds of red dots scattered throughout the solar system. Ships were decloaking everywhere, from behind asteroids, from the shadows of planets, even from inside the rings of the gas giants. Impossible, breathed the Admiral. How did they hide so many vessels from our sensors? He never got an answer. Captain Morrison's voice echoed across all frequencies as the human fleet attacked. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human fleet. You came to our home. You threatened our families. You demanded our surrender. Here's our answer. The first wave of kinetic projectiles struck the Imperial fleet like invisible hammers. Chunks of metal moving at near light speed punched through alien shields as if they didn't exist. Massive warships that had conquered dozens of worlds were torn apart by simple iron and steel, moving fast enough to ignore conventional defenses. But the humans were just getting started. Nuclear warheads modified with gravitational field generators exploded throughout the Imperial formation. Instead of normal spherical blasts, The explosions became focused beams of destruction that cut through multiple ships at once. Admiral Korvash watched in horror as his perfect formation dissolved into chaos. Hundreds of ships were destroyed in the first 30 seconds of battle. His communication systems were jammed by some kind of interference he had never encountered before. "Return fire!" he shouted. "All weapons, target the human vessels!" The Imperial fleet began to respond, their energy weapons lancing out toward the human ships. But the humans weren't fighting like any species the Empire had ever faced. Instead of maintaining formation and trading shots, they scattered in all directions like a swarm of angry insects. Human pilots guided their ships in suicide runs against the largest alien vessels. Ships filled with nuclear explosives rammed into Imperial, dreadnoughts taking out weapon systems and shield generators. Other human vessels used hit-and-run tactics, appearing from behind cover to fire their weapons, then disappearing again before return fire could reach them. The most shocking sight was Captain Morrison's own attack. The Defiance, loaded with every nuclear weapon that could fit in its cargo bay, flew straight toward Admiral Korvash's flagship. Imperial gunners fired everything they had at the small human ship, but Morrison kept coming. "This is for Earth," Morrison said over the radio, as his ship approached the Eternal Conquest. "And this is for every species you've enslaved." The Defiance struck the alien flagship just as its nuclear cargo detonated. The explosion was visible from Earth, a brief new star that flared and died in the darkness of space. When the light faded, both ships were gone. The battle continued for 6 hours. When it finally ended, the space around Earth was filled with the wreckage of both fleets. The humans had lost over half their ships, but the Imperial force was devastated. Of the 5,000 vessels that had approached Earth, fewer than 300 survived to retreat into deep space. The survivors carried with them a message that would shake the foundations of the Galactic Empire. For the first time in 10,000 years, a species had not only refused to surrender, but had inflicted massive casualties on an Imperial fleet. The humans had announced to the galaxy that some species would rather die fighting than live as slaves. And they had the weapons and the will to make that threat very real. Emperor Vexithara stood in his throne room on the Imperial capital world of Korvax Prime, staring at the battle reports from the human system. The massive chamber was built to inspire fear, with walls made of black stone and a ceiling that stretched up into darkness. For 10,000 years this room had been where conquered species came to bow before Imperial might. Today, it felt different. Today the Emperor was angry. "Explain to me," Vexithara said to the surviving commanders who knelt before his throne, "how a primitive species with less than 50 years of spaceflight destroyed an entire Imperial battle fleet." General Zixmore, the Emperor's most trusted military leader, stepped forward. Unlike Admiral Korvash, who had been reptilian, Zixmore belonged to a race that looked like living metal. His body was covered in silver scales that could deflect energy weapons, and his eyes glowed with red light. "Your Majesty," Zixmore said, "the humans fight unlike any species we have encountered. They use weapons that most civilized races abandoned long ago because they are too dangerous." "Dangerous to whom?" the Emperor asked. "To everyone, Majesty. They turn their own nuclear weapons into guided projectiles. They create artificial black holes to bend space around projectiles. They even use their own ships as weapons, ramming our vessels while detonating nuclear explosives." Emperor Vexithara was silent for a long moment. He had ruled the galaxy for over 2,000 years, and in all that time no species had ever fought with such complete disregard for their own survival. "How many ships did we lose?" he asked. 4,732 vessels, Your Majesty. Only 268 ships escaped to hyperspace." The number hit the Emperor like a physical blow. In the entire history of the Empire, they had never lost so many ships in a single battle. Most species surrendered after losing a few dozen vessels. And their losses. Approximately half their fleet, Majesty. But they consider this a victory. Emperor Vexithara stood from his throne, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber. He was 12 feet tall and covered in armor that had been forged from the metal of conquered worlds. His face was hidden behind a mask that had not been removed in centuries. "Prepare the Death Fleet," he commanded. I will personally oversee the destruction of this human species. General Zixmore bowed deeper. Your Majesty, the Death Fleet has not been deployed in over 300 years. Surely a smaller force would be sufficient. No, the Emperor said firmly. These humans must be made an example. Every species in the galaxy must see what happens to those who defy the Empire. Gather 50,000 ships. Bring the planet crackers, the star killers, the quantum destroyers. We will not simply conquer their world. We will erase their entire solar system from existence. On Earth, the celebration of victory was short-lived. Within days of the battle, long-range sensors detected the massive fleet approaching from deep space. President Hayes called an emergency meeting of the Global Defense Council. How many ships? She asked General Turner. Our best estimate is 50,000 vessels, Madam President. That's 10 times larger than the First Fleet. Dr. Sam Rodriguez looked exhausted. He had been working non-stop since the first battle, trying to develop new weapons. We used most of our nuclear material in the first engagement. We have enough for maybe one more battle, but not against a fleet that size. Colonel Amy Parker studied the tactical displays. We can't fight them the same way. They'll be expecting our cloaking technology and our kinetic weapons. We need something completely different. What do you suggest? President Hayes asked. Amy looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. We evacuate as many people as possible to the colony ships. Then we turn our entire solar system into a weapon. The room fell silent. Finally, Dr. Rodriguez spoke. What exactly are you proposing, Colonel? Dr. Rodriguez, you said you could destabilize our sun to create a controlled solar flare. What if we made it bigger? What if we turned our sun into a weapon that could destroy an entire fleet? Sam's face went pale. Colonel, what you're describing would make our solar system uninhabitable for thousands of years. Anyone who stays behind would die. I know, Amy said quietly. But if we don't stop them here, they'll hunt down every human colony in the galaxy. This is our only chance to hurt them badly enough that they leave us alone. President Hayes felt the weight of the decision crushing down on her. She was being asked to approve the destruction of humanity's birth world to save the species itself. How many people could we evacuate, she asked. Maybe 50 million, General Turner replied. We have enough colony ships to reach distant systems where the Empire hasn't expanded yet. That leaves 7 billion people, the President said. 7 billion volunteers, Amy corrected. We announced the plan publicly. Anyone who wants to leave can go. Anyone who stays does so knowing what will happen. Dr. Rodriguez was working frantically on his calculations. If we're going to do this, I need every power plant on Earth connected to the solar destabilization array. We'll also need to build massive shield generators to protect the planet long enough for the weapon to work. How long do we have? President, Hayes asked. 2 weeks before the Imperial fleet arrives, General Turner said. Then we better get started, the President decided. The announcement shocked the world. President Hayes appeared on every television screen and computer monitor on Earth, explaining the plan. The Empire was coming with enough ships to crack planets. Earth's only defense was to turn their sun into a weapon that would destroy the Yimatan attacking fleet and make the solar system uninhabitable. The response was not what anyone expected. Instead of panic, millions of people volunteered to stay and fight. Construction workers built the shield generators. Scientists worked on the solar destabilization array. Soldiers prepared for the final battle. Why? A reporter asked one volunteer, an elderly man from Kansas. Why stay when you could escape to the colonies? The old man smiled. Because this is my home. These aliens think they can come here and tell us what to do. They're about to learn what happens when you make humans angry. Around the world, similar scenes played out. Families said goodbye as some members left for the colony ships, while others stayed to defend Earth. The evacuation ships launched every day carrying precious cargo to distant stars. But for every person who left, 10 more stayed behind. General Zixmore's death fleet entered the human solar system with overwhelming confidence. 50,000 Imperial warships, including planet crackers, capable of splitting worlds and star killers that could destroy entire solar systems. The humans had shown they could fight. But no species could stand against this much firepower. Begin the attack. General Zixmore commanded from his flagship. Target their homeworld first. I want them to watch their planet die before we finish the rest. The general had studied the previous battle carefully. He knew the humans would try to hide ships throughout the system. He was prepared for their suicide attacks and their strange weapons. What he was not prepared for was what the humans had done to their own son. As the Imperial fleet moved into attack formation, Dr. Rodriguez activated the solar destabilization array from deep beneath the Earth's surface. Every power plant on the planet fed energy into the massive machine that had been built in just 2 weeks. The sun began to change. Solar flares erupted from its surface, sending waves of deadly radiation throughout the system. But this was not a natural solar storm. This was artificial, controlled, and far more powerful than anything the universe had ever seen. General Zixmore watched his sensor readings with growing alarm. "What are they doing to their star?" he demanded. His science officer, a being that looked like a giant insect, studied the data. "General, they appear to be artificially inducing a stellar eruption. The energy output is increasing exponentially." "Can our shields handle it?" "No, sir. No known technology can protect against the raw power of a destabilizing star." For the first time in his military career, General Zixmore felt fear. The humans were not trying to defend their world. They were destroying their own solar system to take the Imperial fleet with them. It was the most insane military strategy he had ever encountered, and it was working. General Zixmore watched in horror as the human sun began to tear itself apart. Massive solar flares erupted from its surface, each one larger than most planets. The star was becoming a weapon, and his entire fleet was trapped in its deadly embrace. "On their ships, retreat to hyperspace immediately," he commanded over the fleet communications. But it was too late. The artificial solar storm created gravitational distortions that made faster-than-light travel impossible. His 50,000 ships were locked in the human solar system, facing the fury of an entire star. On Earth, Dr. Rodriguez watched his instruments as the solar destabilization reached critical levels. The planet's surface was already becoming uninhabitable. Temperatures were rising, and deadly radiation poured down from the sky. But the shield generators were giving Earth's defenders precious time. "How long can the shields last?" President Hayes asked from the underground command center. "Maybe 6 hours," Sam replied. "After that, everything on the surface dies." Above them, the final battle had begun. Colonel Amy Parker led the last human ships in desperate attacks against the Imperial fleet. These were not the sleek vessels that had fought in the first battle. These were rough-built fighters and converted civilian ships crewed by volunteers who knew they would never see home again. "This is Colonel Parker to all human forces," she broadcast on all frequencies. "Today, we fight not just for Earth, but for every human who will ever be born. Make them remember us." The human ships flew through radiation that would have killed any normal crew. Their hulls were specially shielded, but the protection would not last long. They had minutes to do as much damage as possible before the solar storm destroyed everything in the system. Amy guided her fighter toward the largest Imperial ship, a massive dreadnought that could crack planets. Nuclear missiles streaked from her weapons bay, each one modified to punch through alien shields. Around her, other human pilots followed her example, turning their ships into guided missiles. General Zixmore felt his flagship shake as human weapons struck its hull. His shields were failing under the combined assault of solar radiation and enemy fire. Around him, Imperial ships were dying by the hundreds as the star storm grew stronger. "General," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the human planet. Put it through," Zixmore commanded. The face of President Hayes appeared on his screen. Behind her, alarms were blaring and the lights flickered as power systems failed. But her voice was calm and steady. "General Zixmore of the Galactic Empire," she said. "I am President Lisa Hayes of Earth. I have a message for your Emperor." Zixmore stared at the human leader. Even as her world died around her, she showed no fear. "What message, human?" "Tell Emperor Vexithera that humanity chose death over slavery. Tell him that we would rather burn our own world than bow to his rule. And tell him that if he ever threatens another species the way he threatened us, we have colonies hidden throughout the galaxy that will make him pay." The transmission ended. President Hayes had delivered humanity's final defiance even as Earth burned beneath the light of its dying sun. The solar storm reached its peak. Waves of energy and plasma swept through the Imperial fleet like the breath of an angry god. Ships that had conquered 1,000 worlds were torn apart by forces beyond their comprehension. The humans had turned their own star into a weapon of mass destruction. General Zixmore's flagship was one of the few vessels with shields strong enough to survive the initial wave. But even his mighty dreadnought was dying. Hull plates melted. Under the intense heat, crew members collapsed as radiation poisoned their bodies. "Sir," his science officer gasped, "the stellar eruption is creating gravitational waves that are affecting nearby star systems. The energy release is visible from over 100 light-years away." Zixmore understood the implications. Every species in this part of the galaxy would see the death of the human sun. They would know that a single planet had destroyed an entire Imperial fleet. The news would spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Colonel Amy Parker made her final attack run against the Imperial flagship. Her fighter was falling apart around her, its hull melting from the solar radiation. But she had enough power for one last strike. "This is for Captain Morrison," she said, as her ship plowed into the alien vessel's command bridge. The explosion tore through the dreadnought's hull, killing General Zixmore and his entire command staff. As the solar storm finally began to subside, only a handful of Imperial ships remained functional. Less than 50 vessels out of 50,000 had survived the artificial stellar eruption. They limped away from the human system, carrying news that would shake the foundations of the Empire. On the distant world of Korvax Prime, Emperor Vexithara received the reports of his fleet's destruction. For the first time in 2,000 years of rule, he felt something he had forgotten: uncertainty. "Your Majesty," his remaining advisors said, "perhaps we should reconsider our approach to the ICO human colonies." The Emperor stared out at the stars from his throne room. Somewhere out there, human survivors were establishing new worlds. They carried with them the knowledge of how to build weapons that could destroy stars. They had proven they would rather die than surrender. "Leave them alone," he commanded. "Mark their territories as forbidden zones. Any Imperial ship that encounters humans is to retreat immediately." "But Your Majesty," one advisor protested, "they are just one species. Surely the Empire can—" "No," the Emperor cut him off. "The humans have taught us something important. Some species cannot be conquered. Some people would rather destroy themselves and everything around them than accept slavery." The news of humanity's sacrifice spread across the galaxy within months. Species that had served the Empire for thousands of years began to whisper among themselves. If humans could hurt the Empire so badly, what might other races accomplish if they worked together? On distant worlds, human colonies received the news of Earth's destruction with tears and rage. But they also received something else: the knowledge that their homeworld had died free. Earth had chosen to burn rather than bow. The human colonies began to grow and spread, carrying with them the memory of a world that had faced impossible odds and refused to surrender. They built new ships, developed new weapons, and prepared for the day when they might face the Empire again. Emperor Vexithara had thought he was destroying a troublesome species. Instead, he had created something far more dangerous: a legend. The story of humanity's defiance would inspire rebellions across the galaxy for generations to come. In the ruins of the Sol system, where Earth had once been a blue jewel among the stars, only dead rocks remained. But those rocks bore witness to something unprecedented in galactic history. A single species had faced the might of the Empire and chosen freedom over life. The stars themselves would remember the day humanity shook the galaxy with their final answer to tyranny. They had proven that some things were worth more than survival. They had proven that freedom was worth any price. The Galactic Empire would never be the same.